Let's get started, y'all. How's everybody doing? Welcome. Thank you for being here. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us. I'm so looking forward to it.
Oh, you can't. Before everybody hopped on, I was just pouring my guts out and my heart out to Stephanie because I feel so honored to be having this conversation with you. Not only as a creative, as a leader, but as somebody who has been through some stuff and has worked really hard, I feel like in myself to figure out how to find, happiness here and not out there.
Yeah.
And you have done that. And you have not only done that, but you've been able to articulate in a way that is empowering many, many, many people. Over almost 1 million followers on Instagram. I'm sure there's many more that are out there and those connections that's come out of that. And now with this book and becoming a bestseller in the first couple weeks, and I know you're headed to the top to that very very top list because it's spectacular. And I'll kid you not, for everybody listening, I compared Stephanie to Brene Brown this morning. I know she'll blush saying me saying that, but I did because I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. But the way Stephanie has articulated this work, she's done it in such a simple and I want to say digestible way that allows people to put it into action now, right? And do it now. And there's not many academics out there, authors, researchers, so on and so forth, who can do that. But you care so much about people and you care so much about your community that I know that was the first thing that you made sure this book did and the work that you did. So thank you, Stephanie, for being here and having this conversation with me.
Thank you. You're going to make me cry and definitely blushing to the extreme. Thank you. I'm so grateful, and your kind words mean everything to me. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, and thank you everybody for being here. The chat is going to be blowing up. Please use it. My name is John Johnson, principal and co-founder of a small studio. I also like to call myself an identity architect because I am passionate about helping people understand who they are and how to translate that powerfully into the world, into the marketplace. And you can see how that aligns deeply in the work that Stephanie is doing with New Happy aligns so deeply with me. A small studio's mission is to empower creative leaders to use their gifts of design or use their gifts, period, to bring peace to people's lives, right? And if you have not read Stephanie's book yet, that's literally everything she's
That's
talking about.
it. That's the whole
So
message, pretty much.
so, so welcome to this conversation. Me and Stephanie are going to just be having a conversation, but we would love for all of you to get involved. So there is a Q&A and we are open to questions and we will be, thank you, Rishi. We will be, go ahead and share the link to that in the chat. We will be answering those questions as we go. Otherwise, I have plenty of questions and we have plenty of points to touch on that me and Stephanie are going to be going over throughout this time together. Okay. And with that being said, I was thinking about how I wanted to kick off this conversation, Stephanie. I I was like, I am not going to do a formal introduction. That's a little stuffy. I don't want to, introduce her book. She can do that way better than I can. But I remember back to how we met, and it's just one of those serendipitous moments that allowed us to be here right now together. Um, Jake Lau, one of my team members at a small studio, brought up New Happy, your Instagram page, at our Monday vibe check. And every Monday, my team gets together and we set the vibe for the week. Somebody chooses a song or a topic or just anything that sets the vibe for the week. And it's our way of grounding after the weekend and really getting prepared for the week ahead. And Jake brought up New Happy. I was already following New Happy, but most of my team wasn't. And I'm like, wow, I need to check this out. And then literally, I think it was the same week or the week after you posted on your page on New Happy and said, "Hey, this book is about to be released. DM me if you want to share it with your community." And I DM'd you. And next thing you know, you responded to me, which I was very surprised that you even responded to me because I'm like, this, she has like 1 million followers. I don't know. She's probably not going to respond to me. And she responded, everybody, and I read verbatim. Hi, John, double exclamation marks. Wow, all caps. I'm so inspired. I'm laughing because your studio is basically embodying the message of my book, too. LOL. I don't think you need to read it. You're a master. Blush. I'm so inspired to hear about what you do. I'd love to connect and learn more about you and your work if you're interested. A couple weeks later, me and Stephanie connect and we share our stories. And I want to tell you that everything that she wrote in her book is so genuine because we didn't talk about business. We didn't talk about, work or anything like that. We talked about our stories and what we've been through. And just before this conversation, we talked about working with people who have been through something. And I knew right there that I was a fan of this person and I would follow her anywhere. And I'm going to do everything I can to support. But also, I'm just like, yes, let's go. I could talk to this person. So, Stephanie, let's kick it off there. I set the stage for our meeting. Like, why did you respond that way? Like, what was it that came up for you in the work that we're doing that made that connection? And then we can dive in from there.
I can't believe you read the message. I I love it so much, but I feel like some people don't like how enthusiastic I am. So the fact that you liked that and responded means a lot to me. Well, when you sent me that message, I went and I looked at your profile and then I looked at a small studio and then I read everything I could on your site. And as I said, I thought, you don't need this book. You're already doing it. You're already living this philosophy. And I think, um, part of I think what I hope comes through in the book is that there are already so many people out there who are living in this way. Maybe it's both feet in the way that you are with a small studio. There are people who have like one foot in, or they're trying to jump in, they're trying to step into this space. But there's so much goodness that's already happening. And I think part of what I was hoping to do with this book and with sharing this philosophy is give people the language to describe that, to say, hey, this is something that we're striving to move towards and something that we're striving to move away from. And by labeling it in that way, we can start to have more constructive conversations about what is
Mm.
working for us and what isn't. So when I saw that your literal mission was to use your gifts to bring peace, I thought, well, that's new happy and you're already doing it. And I'm sure there are many other people on this call who are living new happy in their own ways. They just maybe haven't described it in that way before.
It's beautiful. Um, I want to say I'll rephrase what you just said because I do need it, and we do need it because when it comes to empowering others to not only be able to find themselves and really understand who they are on another level, but also then take action and share themselves with others and help and bring peace.
Mhm.
It's not easy to articulate, right? Just what you just said. It's not easy. And I talk to so many people every single day, many of them on this call right now, and it's like we talk about it and we share, but it's very hard to empower others in a tangible way. And you've done that from through your visuals, through this book, through the words, the way that you brought so many different people into the book and thought processes and their wisdom. And I
Mhm.
remember the chapter, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I'll come back to the beginning. I remember the chapter where you said, I think you were referencing Steve Jobs and Albert Einstein and how humble they were in realizing that nothing they created was done by themselves. It
Mhm.
was built on the foundation of so many other people, right? And it was your way of articulating that we're not alone here and we can't survive by ourselves. and we're not living in this egocentric world, but this eco
Mm.
system, right? So I think it's beautiful how you navigated that. And being a design leader and running a design agency, I teach my team and really challenge my team every day to make things simple. Because
Mm.
if we're making it complicated, right, and it's not accessible to even the the most disadvantaged, then
Yeah,
really what are we doing?
yeah.
Really, who are we serving? Right. And so that's why I think it's so special what you're doing and how you've done it. And that's why I'm a big fan. And that's why I'm pumped to be able to have this conversation with you.
Thanks. Well, it's, part of the impetus for starting the New Happy in the first place back in 2018 was that when I went to grad school, I realized that there was all of this amazing information out there about how to be happy and how to live a good life, but it wasn't trickling down. And the stuff that was trickling down was being interpreted through, an old happy lens in many cases. It wasn't really helping us to move society forward towards more interdependence and more of an ecosystem and more opportunities for people to use their gifts to help others. And that was really what inspired me to want to share it because those academic journals are read by like 100 people. Like they are not accessible, they are not digestible, they don't apply to somebody's life, and you have to be trained in order to engage with them. And so any content or educational materials or design or anything like that, the more that we can make it something that reaches the greatest majority of people, the more opportunities for service that we have. And I think that was one of the guiding principles that has really been a part of the core of the ethos there.
Yeah. Well said. I think it's beautiful. So I think we need to dive into because you already referenced old happy and new happy. So type in the chat yes or no if you've read New Happy already, or if you've heard of New Happy before, or no if you haven't. So we get a good idea of who we have in this room. And we could tailor the language maybe appropriately. I'm going to go back to the beginning of your book, Stephanie. You wrote something that was so beautiful and beautiful the way you wrote it, which I feel like everyone should start their books this way and note if there's any prominent authors or soon to be authors on the call, take note because you wrote in the beginning, you wrote how to use this book.
Mm.
And at the end of that section, you said, my wish. I have one request and I have one wish. And I'm going to read the wish. It said, and my wish, my greatest, most wildly ambitious wish is that this book rings a bell inside of you. I hope that the bell peals so loudly that it shakes all of the false messages from where they have settled in the rafters of your heart and they come crashing down once and for all. I hope there, in the open space that remains, you discover what happiness truly means to you. What's so spectacular about that message is, first off, at a small studio, we ring the bell for moments of clarity, moments of joy, and it's become a core part of our culture at a small studio. And that's why we call our newsletter that we send out every day or every week, Ding, for that ding moment. And the fact that you said ring a bell, I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
serendipitous
so much.
and divine. But then you said, you're writing this book called New Happy, but then you said, discover what happiness truly means to you. And I feel like that once again, just a part of your humility and your humanity, where it's not like, I'm not going to tell you what it means. You go and find it for yourself.
Mm.
And I think that that's another level of this. And I hope everybody gains that. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to tell you what to do or how to do it. We're here to give you insights for you to discover that for yourself. And I think that that's empowerment, that's leadership, and that's service, right? And that shows your humanity and your humility. Why did you put that in the beginning of your book, your how to use this book, this request and this wish?
I think honestly because I think it's grounded in what you said there about respecting everyone's different. And part of, New Happy is about embracing your authenticity, which means that there's no one path that you can follow and there's no one way that you can be in order to be happy. There's just your way that you're making every day. And so if if through the book I can help you to do that exercise of watching all of those false societal stories crumble, like almost I the mental image I have is like of decaying greatness, like like Roman ruins and stuff like that, right? Like watch them fall down. Let's bring those ideas down inside of us where they currently live in so many ways. And then my hope for the book is like you read it and you're like, I know this. Like it's in me somewhere, you know what I mean? And it was just covered up by those walls. It was blocked from my consciousness and my heart because of everything that has happened to me and all the conditioning that I've been a part of. I had somebody message me this morning and say that they just finished the book and it felt like a permission slip to them to trust themselves and to recognize that like what they believed was true and that they didn't have to listen to those external forces. And so I think it was about that because there's no that feeling of inner alignment and of recognizing like this is I can trust myself and I'm worthy, I'm okay and I can follow what's in my heart. That's probably one of the greatest feelings that exists. And so the more that I can give people that permission to trust that part of themselves that's good and pure and loving and connected, then you're going to find your way by yourself. You don't really need me in any way.
Let's go. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for doing it. And it aligns so much with me as I do the work around identity architecture. When I did my first workshop, I said, I am not going to tell them anything
Mhm.
because it's not up to me to
Mhm.
tell them anything. It's up to them to discover that for themselves. And I'll just give them, I like to use this analogy, a playground to play in or a sandbox to play in and do that discovery, maybe in a safe space, maybe in a safe environment that will hold their hand along the way. And you said that before the call, you know, I'm not following you, even though I said I would. Um, we're walking side by side together. And I think that that's another aspect of this ego that we're playing with in our world and our society today is, people want others to follow them, and it's that dominance piece.
Mhm.
So let's go into that before I dive in. Let's for those that haven't read it or haven't really dove into this concept of new happy. Can you go ahead and define the old happy versus the new happy?
Yeah. So old happy is society's construction of happiness and then the culture that we've created surrounding it and the institutions and systems that support it. So old happy comes from three forces in society. The first is individualism, the second is capitalism, and the third is domination. And these forces teach us what matters, what's important, who is celebrated, who is included, who is elevated in any form of rewards or systems. And then it nudges us in very, very overt ways and very, very subtle ways to behave in ways that end up reinforcing those values within us. So we sort of internalize them and we develop these brains that are old happy brains essentially that guide us and we then perpetuate it. So over time, old happy becomes this very self-reinforcing system. So that's old happy. And new happy is first of all, involves unwinding all of those beliefs. I think of that part as kind of like the unbrainwashing yourself section of the book, like letting go of all of those ideas and learning to come back to that open space that you quoted in there. And then seeking to live a life where you are true to yourself and you share yourself with others in order to make their lives better and to make them happy. And it's those two pieces that are required in order to live a life of lasting happiness.
Well articulated. Thank you. No, it's before when I talked to Stephanie, one of the things that came up, I said, thank you for, I was actually on the fence and maybe some of you who are listening, I was like, I even told my team a couple weeks ago, I'm like, I don't really like that word happy. And I think it's because of the old happy, right? It's this construct and it's, what does it really mean? And is it even possible? is it even real or is it this fake thing? So I'm like, I don't know if I like that happy. So as I read the book, I'm like, oh, okay. What she did is she was able to help us to identify what hasn't been working and has actually been the product of a lot of suffering, and tie it to something new that actually provides hope and gives I want to say a structure, a framework for people to play within to grasp a lot of the work that we've been talking about, and to push towards something that is real, is tangible, and actually is proven and has shown results to have people live a better life. So if
Yeah.
you were to define happiness,
Yeah.
how would you define it, Stephanie?
I think it's there's a lot of different ways that I try to articulate it. Like there's the two pillars of that I mentioned of like be who you are and use it to help other people. There's being yourself and giving yourself. There's using your gifts to help other people. There's all these different ways to articulate the pathway to happiness, which is what the book goes into. But
Hmm.
I think at the end of the day, what the state of happiness is, like that feeling and that the outcome of that path is it's a state of being that comes from being connected, connected to yourself, connected to others, and connected to the world around you. And unfortunately, old happy disconnects us from ourselves, disconnects us from others, and disconnects us from the broader world. And that is why it will never, ever, ever make us happy. And unfortunately, has all of these other terrible downstream consequences leading to many of society's greatest problems as well.
Yeah. Some of the highlights that I had from when you described "Oh Happy," you gave some definite or some concepts or potential examples, and one of them, and I know that I work with a lot of emerging creatives, young, early stage designers or creatives who are coming out of school or just getting into the field, and I'm passionate about that. I love working with them and I love supporting them. Right? But I've heard some of these before from them. Even as recently as this week or last week. One of them, I never feel like I'm good enough.
Mm.
Ever. I never feel like I'm good enough. I got what I thought I wanted and I still feel miserable. And in the chat, let us know if you've felt this way, or if you still feel this way. I never let myself take breaks or rest. It feels like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. I feel so lonely all of the time. Am I the only one who is secretly miserable but pretending not to be? And this is my favorite one, not my favorite one, but one that I've heard so many times. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is in quotation marks, supposed. Why isn't it working? I think that last one really ties what you said already. This that we've been ingrained a way of being and what we should be going after and what we should be doing. I love me and my wife always use this concept. Stop shoulding all over me, because we get in that mindset of, oh, you should do this or you should stop shoulding all over me, and we do it and then it doesn't work. And where does that leave us? Right? And I'm around that all the time. I got my degree. Why am I not getting a job? Right? Oh, I learned this skill. Why isn't it working? Or whatever it is. So I love that you put some of these examples in there because you help people to digest it and resonate, right? Resonate with each other. But I think this one piece I want to leave y'all with as we kick off this book is you said in page 13, you said, when you change your definition of happiness, everything else changes too. And I want to encourage everybody on here to do what Stephanie has talked about, define that word. And words matter. So when I'm doing my workshops, I never, ever tell somebody, you define this word this way. I ask them to define the word and then we structure the exercise around their definition of that word. And then everybody can now be on a mutual playing field as to how we're discussing it versus saying, oh, yeah, happiness. And then we all have different definitions of that word before we even started talking, and then we're not really actually talking.
No.
Have you experienced that,
Oh, of
Steph?
course. Yeah, it's like happiness is one of those words, right? It's fuzzy, it's vague, it has so many personal meanings. Um, and I think like to your point earlier, John, about how you didn't like the word happy. I think a lot of people feel the same way. I think a lot of people don't like the word and they feel, God, that's unattainable. How could I be happy? Or I've given up on that idea. And even if you think about something like what we see in the news every day, like people in this country have in for those of us in the US have different understandings of ideas like freedom or like community or acceptance, right? We have different perspectives on it, and that means that we're never ever on the same page, and they're never ever able to have a meaningful conversation. And so I think that's part of what I wanted to do with the book was to give people this very clear language and definition and say, okay, here's the difference of what we're talking about. And I know you have heard a lot of other things about happiness. It's a very well trodden topic. So let's put that all to the side and just for a little while, let's use these terms and see how they work for us to give us a new, more nuanced understanding. Because at the end of the day, I think we can all say that every framework is flawed in one way or another, right? It's just a lens through which to view a very complex topic. And maybe someday the idea of new happy and old happy won't be necessary anymore because we'll have moved on from it in some way. We'll have used it for its utility, and that's totally fine. But I think what I perceived was that there was a need for language to label those two states of being that I had just observing so much in myself and in my community and in the literature as well.
Yeah. And it's what I have found to be one of the biggest downfalls for connection. And
Mm.
in your book, you spend a lot of time helping people realize that we are connected, no matter what. Like we are connected. We are not alone. And that's why your first principle of, oh, happy individualism, we are not alone. But I feel like our communication has struggled so much because we're not willing to take a moment and say, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Versus just assuming that what that person meant is what you thought it meant. And sometimes all it takes is a question. And that's another thing I share with my team all the time. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. If you're not asking questions, you're being selfish, especially as a designer, because you're now assuming and now you're designing for yourself rather than what you should be designing for is others. And I always say that design is one of the most selfless professions out there because we literally are never designing for ourselves. And that's why identity architecture has come up to be a founding principle of my studios because it's allowed me and my team to focus so much on those that we're designing for and having them do the work to discover themselves. And then, okay, now we have a blueprint. Now we're all on the same page as to who this is and who we are designing for. And that's just a practice that we do in design, but it can be a practice for at home with your spouse or with your children or with your team or whatever it is. And that's why I love how you've written this book because you have defined a lot of these words, but it's not even just you saying it. You've brought in all of these other characters, real people who have done incredible work, and you've referenced them and referenced their stories. Way to go! Like truly, truly magnificent. I'm gonna start with some questions that came up. And you said these are the three most important questions you will ever ask yourself when you're helping people understand, who they are and find their new happy. First question you said, "Who am I?" All right, this question is about your identity and how you see yourself, which everybody knows. If you know me, I've asked you that question probably. Who are you really? Um, what should I do? This question is about your goals, choices, and daily activities. And how am I related to others? And this question is about your relationships with others and the greater world. And this book is glittered with promptings to help people do the work as they're reading versus you just talking to them. which another thing I love about this, as you could tell. As you were able to, you've done a lot of research in your career, and we can go back there to your story. How did you distill this concept down to these three questions? And I want to, because I at the end of the book you talk about dream big, start small, and that's a
Yeah.
big concept of a small studio. Everything starts small. Let's go back to the small beginnings,
Yeah.
right? Did it start with these three questions? How long did it take you to get to these three questions? And share your journey and your story along the way if you feel necessary.
Yeah, I think that uh the it did not start with those three questions. That took me like 8 years to figure out. So
8 years, everybody, 8 years.
a really long time. I think it started with a recognition that something was wrong. And that was it. That was all I knew. Something was wrong with me. I was a very unhappy person. I struggled to feel happy, even though my life was like, quote, going well. I felt lonely and lost and unhappy. And so I knew that there was something wrong with me. And then I looked around and it seemed like other people were experiencing something similar. They were struggling as well. And that led me to want to investigate and figure out what exactly was wrong. And so it was really a hunch, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. No data at that point, no proof to point to. And that's what led me to grad school to try and figure out what was happening from a research perspective. And to dig into that, I started reading all these studies, trying to wrap my hands around it, and ultimately realizing, 6 or 7 years later, that we have these beliefs that I call, like the old happy worldview. It's this way that we've been taught to see ourselves, to see others, to see what we do in our lives, and they influence everything. They influence all of the actions that we take every single day. If you are somebody who fundamentally believes that you're not lovable, that you're not enough, that there's something wrong with you, that you're broken and bad on the inside, we can all see pretty clearly how that belief would then influence the decisions that you make about what do you do with your life, what kind of people do you surround yourselves with, how do you treat yourself. It has all of these downstream consequences that end up affecting you. So it was a multi-stage process of starting to trace out how we got here, what those influences were, how they make us believe that, and really like kind of the only way I can describe it is it was like one of those police boards with like trying to solve a case or something, trying to track down all the different pieces and see how they all connected. And reading a ton and drawing upon many smart people and their thoughts that ultimately led me to believe that it's these three core worldview beliefs that ultimately end up shaping so much that we need to address if we want to start changing the world around us so that other people in turn don't adopt those beliefs for themselves.
And I think the key word for everybody to know, like, it takes a lot of time to
Yeah.
be able to distill it down to these questions.
Mm.
But you said you started it from a place of, repeat it. It started from a place of
Curiosity.
curiosity, but you also said like realization that you weren't happy.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
pain.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it was a
pain.
pain. It was pain. It was trying to figure out how to fix my own pain, really. Like that was really where this started. Why is this happening to me? And eventually I stopped thinking so much about myself and realized that there was a lot more to learn and to glean. But yeah, it started all from that place.
And I think that that's where I want to go next, Stephanie, because as I went through your book, right, you started breaking down the construct of old happy, and then you started to build up the construct of new happy, and helping people realize what that is. And then you start to move into this empowerment phase, where I think you start to actually encourage people to sit and be okay with their brokenness, and be okay with the hurt and be okay with the messy parts of their life, because that is what makes us human. And at the end of the day, when you ask enough questions about who am I, all right, you can get to the place that I am a human being, or I am just that. I am. I had that conversation yesterday. Um, Tell me about that journey through your pain. You know, you starts by you crying, you know, in your apartment and just realizing that you're not happy, and you share that at the beginning of your book. And I just want to go there because I feel like we don't do it enough, especially in business, in our capitalistic society, so on and so forth. You talk in your book that sometimes people see that and they they think that you're less than because you are talking about your pain or your brokenness. And I've realized that you're more than when you are able to do that, because that means that you've done some work,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And you're willing to share it and you're no longer ashamed of it. All
Mhm.
right. So how talk about that journey. I really want to know about that. And I think that that could help people. Like that journey of going from that moment of just like, I am broken and I am not happy, to now releasing this book that is reaching a lot, hundreds of thousands of people.
I grew up believing that my brokenness was a liability. That's what I thought, a problem to solve, something that could be fixed if you did enough, if you achieved enough, if you were pretty enough, if you were smart enough, if you got enough grades, like whatever, right? The list goes on about the qualifications. You could paper over your humanity essentially, and that was required in order to be happy. That your pain had to be eliminated, you couldn't have it anymore, you had to escape it. And what this personal journey has taught me is, from that moment that you mentioned of, crying on my bedroom floor in my 20s thinking, what's wrong with me, I have everything I'm supposed to want and I'm miserable, um is the recognition that the pain in our lives is never going to go away. It's never going to be it's never going to be something that we can wave a magic wand or achieve our way out of. And we need a new relationship to our pain. And what I came to realize was that my old happy worldview was like, I'm bad, I'm not good enough. And therefore, and my pain is proof of that. It's proof that I'm not good enough. And so when you have that belief, you want to shove it all away and hide it and, overcome it in whatever ways that you can. And what I realized was that actually my pain is part of being a human, and my humanity is what gives me everything. Everything good. It gives me the ability to connect with other people who have struggled. It gives me any gifts that I possess, any ability to make art. Like everything that's on the new happy is in many ways informed by my own pain, my own difficulties with the emotion that I'm talking about or whatever it is. It's all bled through that lens. And all of that goodness means that the humanity is a gift. It's the best thing that I have going for me in many ways, and so I think that that awareness was profoundly transformative, because all of a sudden I didn't have to change or hide it or fix myself. I could just embrace it and say, "Yeah, I'm struggling. This is hard. I've suffered. So has everyone else. That means that we're connected and we have something to learn from one another." And in many ways, any pain that I've gone through has only deepened the gifts that I have to share with the world. So why wouldn't I embrace that for what it is and try and learn something from it or overcome it? And that realization that, sadness and pain and suffering are not separate from happiness, but are a part of living a happy life, was ultimately probably one of the most freeing things that I personally realized. And then it's what also tees up the potential for what I argue is the secret to happiness, which is helping people. Because, like, there are people out there who are in need. They're struggling, they're suffering, and we could help them. We could help them to alleviate that pain and that suffering. And in doing so, we can create happiness for them and for ourselves at the same time. And so that idea, this like desire, I saw somebody put a question in about toxic positivity. I think this is really kind of hitting on this. It's that idea that pain should be eliminated. It's bad, it's shameful, it should be hidden away. No, no, it should be talked about, it should be brought out into the open because that's what enables us to be there for one another and to support each other.
Whew,
Heavy.
Stephanie. No, it is heavy, and I think it's only heavy because of what you said. We don't talk about it enough.
Doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be heavy. Like I feel like whenever I meet people, I want to talk about the hard stuff that I've been through. I want to talk about the because it's real and it's as real as the beautiful stuff and often they go together. They are related to one another.
Hmm. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. Exactly what I was hoping to gain from that question, because in the work that I do with individuals specifically, I've said this statement: when we use our experiences to help others, the purpose for that experience is realized. And what you've done in your book is you've been able to help people realize, like, hey, yes, exactly what you just said, that pain is a great conduit to help. And once you are able to heal, or even, I want to say, own and define or realize the pain, and that it's actually pain and not happiness, you're able to now help others and use that. And I always, my one of my main purposes, I one of my one thing in life is to help as many people find the little bit of light that lives on the inside of them. And one of the reasons why that came up for me is because as long as they can see that little bit of light, they can keep moving forward and they can continue to live on purpose. And the pain piece has gotten in the way of that. Um, a lot of people I've talked to have adopted that pain and have labeled it bad.
Yeah, right.
When realize, and I think that this is the next generation, and Rishi asked that question. Rishi, shout out to you. We've been having this conversation, and there's like a revolution taking place where people are more willing to speak about their pain and share it, even with strangers, because it's no longer a bad thing. It's actually a superpower. Right. And I just went through cancer last year, and I now have been able to confidently tell people, like, I as soon as it happened, and I know that this is an anomaly in a way, I saw it as a blessing, because now I can help others and support others, and now I can empathize deeply with people who are sick. I couldn't do that before
Oh
because I was never
no,
sick,
totally. Yeah.
right? And now I can empathize even more with people, right? And I think that that's what you did, is you gave people a framework of connecting something that has been labeled so bad and not good, or I can't be successful because I went through that, or I can't be lovable because I went through that. But actually, that can become your a purpose. That can become a hope. That can become a self actualizing thing that can move you forward and keep you living and breathing with intention and enthusiasm. So you said it. You said it perfectly. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I think, I've been thinking a little bit about one of the problems that I often see when people try to find their purpose in life. And the analogy I've been reflecting on is this idea that people think that finding their purpose is like hosting an elaborate dinner party with an unlimited budget, and you go to the grocery store and you buy these like beautiful ingredients, and then you come home and you make this absolutely perfect, fantastic meal. Like that's sort of how we approach looking for a purpose. Like, what do I want? What do I want this to be? Like, what are the ideal circumstances?
Mm,
And in reality, I think that purpose is more finding your purpose is more like opening your fridge after you haven't been to the store in like 2 weeks. There's almost nothing in there and everything is kind of weird and doesn't go together, and you have to make a meal out of it. And that's really what finding your purpose is about. It's much more likely. that you will find your purpose from looking at your suffering and from looking at the undesirable circumstances of your life, because that's where you find the pain.
Wow. Wow. Um, if you're listening, those are moments of wisdom that I would encourage you to take with you. I can't believe we're at 48 because I have so much I wanted to talk about. We have a question, but before we go there, gifts.
Yeah.
You and I believe it's Peter Block
Mm.
who wrote the book Structure of Belonging, or Community, the Structure of Belonging, are one of the few people that have written about gifts
Mm.
and have brought gifts to the forefront for people and realized that, hey, this is a big part of society, big part of community, big part of service, so on and so forth. And I thank you for that because it's something that I find it hard to keep moving forward in business specifically. But you said human beings possess three gifts: humanity, which I thought was spectacular because your gift is your humanness, and you already articulated that just so well. Talent and wisdom, right? Talent being I want to say your what you do, and then wisdom being what you know.
Mm.
And I think that that's a beautiful way. And I just wanted to say that for everybody. If you haven't read the book, or if you don't even read the book, that's just found to be a really big takeaway because a lot of time we think of our gifts as something that we need to translate into money or
Yeah.
translate into capitalistic society or translate into dominance or so on and so forth. But actually, you are a gift because you are human.
You are. You are. You're
Just
enough. You're enough as you are. Like,
mm.
isn't that
And
revolutionary? It was revolutionary for me.
I don't think anybody's really articulated that just that simply. But then you add the talent piece.
Yeah.
Right, that's another type of gift. What you do, use that talent to help others, but then the wisdom also. Use that wisdom in your experiences to share that with others so that they can gain from that. And that's a gift also. And it's like these gifts. So thank you for doing that. And I'm gonna go ahead and address these questions. Laura says, how do we maintain the new happy philosophy if many of the social financial systems we are living in are founded on old happy?
Really hard. I wish I had a magical answer that I could offer you. My I have a short-term answer and a long-term answer. So I'll start with the long-term one. The long-term one is that we have to rebuild systems to be supportive of well-being. A we have a we have built our culture on individualism, capitalism, and domination. And so those are the systems that we have today. And we can build something different. We don't have to be stuck with it in this way. And so that includes, and the ways in which we do that are ironically simultaneously using our gifts to help solve the problems in the world and trying to help make the world better. So we can I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that happiness and a better world are two ideas that are at odds. They are supportive and reinforcing of one another. They lead to one another, but only when you're operating under the right understanding of happiness. Currently, our problem is that most people have an old happy understanding of happiness. And that means that they need to consume more and more. They need to be better than other people. They need to dominate others through what they do. They need to elevate themselves above others in whatever ways they can. That then contributes to those systems and ends up making them worse. So this is like the long-term play here is we have to remake our society. So that's like not easy for all of us who have to pay our bills this month, right? So that's not going to work in the short term. That means that what we have to do in the short term is figure out how we can create and craft lives that fulfill our material needs, which are very, very real and are grounded in our safety needs to be able to provide for ourselves and for our families. We have to find ways to work within the system to provide enough that we need in order to then be the ones who are reshaping that system in the long term. So, depending on what your situation is like, there are a couple of different things you can think about. One is figuring out the work that's meaningful and important to you that advances one of those causes. Where are your gifts needed to solve a problem in the world where you can also be be compensated fairly and be able to again fulfill those safety needs for yourself. Two, if you're doing that through your job is not something that's of interest to you, is there a way that you can contribute to our collective well-being through the family that you're raising, through the communities that you're a part of, through your neighborhood, through different opportunities to just be a kind person and to give back to the world, because those small actions really do add up. Um, and then four, where do we have power? Where do we have the chance to make and reshape these systems right now? Whether that's through civic engagement, whether that's through building companies like a small studio that are doing things differently and supporting them with our resources and with our finances. I think we have to we have to find ways to navigate the system we're in while simultaneously building the world that we want to live in.
You nailed it because I was going to bring that up. What I found is that typically that's always been the way that it has your second answer. That's how it's always been. And I think that that's a context that I'm willing to boldly state is maybe you're not broken, maybe the world is broken. And to live on purpose, it's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. The work isn't easy, and if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? Everybody's heard that. So
Mhm.
now with a small studio, and I'll just say how I've done it, and I believe Stephanie has reaffirmed this, which was huge for me. Um, Take something that you know you're uniquely positioned to do, you're uniquely gifted to do, that you actually care about doing, and then just do it with this new happy
Yeah.
philosophy in mind. Just do it. Just start.
It
And
started.
that's
It's like going to change everything.
just start. If you don't start, it will never change. And that's the last piece in your book. One of the last graphics said, dream big, start small. And that's it. If you believe in this philosophy, just start. And that's good enough. And if you think too big about changing society, yeah, maybe, but just start.
Just get started. Like I just started and it took me so much courage and like years of building up to it. Like years of mustering up my courage and trying to overcome my fear to get started. And I never would have imagined that I'd be sitting here today having this conversation. It was way too big. It would have been way too ambitious. It would have scared the crap out of me. And if you just get started, you have no idea where it's going to take you. Like it's going to be miraculous because you're aligned with who you are, with your gifts, with a need that you see in the world. And part of individualism is this idea that there's like one hero who's going to save us, and that's total garbage. Like the only way we're going to change our society is if we have a critical mass of people who are all doing their part, however small it might feel to them. It is not small because in totality it adds up and has the power to change everything. And so your little bit, even if it feels small and inadequate and you can only do 10 minutes today, that's being joined up with like hundreds of thousands of other people who are doing their little bit every day. And slowly we will be able to build a world where people can actually be happy.
Yeah. Laura, it's hard, but that's why we're having this conversation. That's why I decided to have Stephanie on. That's why Stephanie decided to write a book because we got to continue to do this. I know we're almost at time, so I'm gonna go to your last chapter. And you said, as you build a happier world, remember these key lessons. Be yourself, use your gifts in new ways, reject the status quo, fight for what's right, hold on to hope, embrace the challenge, and dream big, but start small. And I think to the anonymous attendee, and Shay, I'm gonna let you ask Stephanie that question directly. Send her an email. But that hustle culture is the status quo.
Yeah.
The status quo, sadly, is people working 80 plus hours, especially here in America.
Mhm.
The status quo is sacrificing sleep and not spending time with your family and so on and so forth. That's the status quo. Once you realize that the status quo, like why do you want to be it? And me and Stephanie were talking before this, and I'll bring it up again. And this is for everybody who's listening. And if you want to work with us, I like who wants to work with the status quo? Who wants to do anything that's the status quo? Embrace the challenge, hold on to hope, fight for what's right, right? Use your gifts in new ways, be yourself. All of these things, you could take that, and Laura, you can do whatever it is you want to do with those principles, right? But Stephanie, leave our audience with one piece of wisdom outside of what you already said in your book.
Oh gosh, I mean, honestly, the best advice I have is go help somebody. It's like that my evergreen advice. If you want to feel happier, go help someone. If you can do it using your gifts, even better. But no matter what, helping will help you. And the more that we can build a world where we help each other, the more that we can create a world where people can be happy. So that's always my guidance.
Amen to that. Stephanie, thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in this conversation with Stephanie Harrison, the author and founder of The New Happy. A Small Studio brings this to you because we believe wholeheartedly in everything that she is saying. We practice it, we live it, we deliver it to our clients in this capitalistic marketplace that we operate in. So please, give us a shout if you have any questions or thoughts. I know Stephanie will get back to you just like she got back to me. And then, grab her book, please. I highly encourage you to read it, enjoy it, and love it as much as I loved it. We will send the link in the chat and also in our follow-ups. And then for those who are still around, the small studio is going to give away 5 books to 5 lucky attendees. All we ask is that you go ahead and share your 3 top takeaways from this conversation, right? The things that hit you the most, the things that touched you the most, and go ahead and tag A Small Studio Co. and New Happy Co. on there, and we'll send you a free book. Well, not a free book, a copy of New Happy with Stephanie, and we'll continue to spread this message to the world. All right. Thank you from a small studio. And just remember, everything starts small and it starts with you. Thank you for your presence and thank you for being here. Stephanie, thank you for your time and congratulations on everything.
Thank
You are a role model to me.
Oh, well, right back at you. And thank you to everyone, to you and to the whole Small Studio team and to all of you for being here. I'm so grateful for your time. And it was so wonderful to have this conversation with you.
All right, everybody, take care.
Bye.
Peace.